Good evening, brothers and friends. Thank you for joining us yet again for another virtual Masonic education with the Rubicon Masonic Society. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Tonight, we have a very special presentation and look forward to discussing it with you. This episode tonight marks our 79th episode of our virtual Masonic education series since we started back in 2020. For those of you who are returning visitors, thank you for participating with us and your support. For those of you who are joining us for the first time tonight, we welcome you. We hope you enjoy our education this evening and look forward to your feedback and future attendance as well. As always, a very special thank you goes out to those behind the scenes that helped to make this happen. All brothers at the William O. Ware Lodge of Research, all brothers at Lexington Lodge No. 1, and of course, the Rubicon Masonic Society. We thank you all very much for your continued support of our mission of Masonic education. Worship Brother Alan Martin, chaplain of the Rubicon Masonic Society, will you please do the honors of delivering an opening devotion tonight?
Gentlemen, let's pray. Grand Architect of the universe, creator of all things, we pray this evening as we gather for this meeting that you will unite our hearts and minds in common purpose. Grant us the wisdom to apply the tenets of our craft so we may be better able to improve our lives as we labor to become better men. We pray that you will bless our presenters this evening and lead and guide our discussion so that we may be productive in our undertaking. These things we pray in your holy name. Amen.
So voted P. Thank you, brother. Gentlemen, the purpose of our meetings is to help us to become better men, coming together, always devoted to our family, our faith, our country. May we all come together tonight to learn to subdue our passions, to discipline our minds, and to strive to improve ourselves through the tools of Freemasonry. Any opinions expressed during this virtual education will be those of the presenter or participant. They do not necessarily reflect the views of any lodge or Grand Lodge or the Rubicon Masonic Society. By participating with us, you do consent to our guidelines, and our full disclaimer, as always, can be found at rubiconmasonicsociety.com/disclaimer. Brothers and friends, as you know, these are not tiled meetings. Masons and non-Masons are welcome to attend and participate, so please be mindful that anything discussed should always be suitable for Masons of all degrees, as well as non-Masons. Gentlemanly manners at all times. Please, no alcohol, no smoking, no eating or foul language will be permitted. If you have to do so, please just turn off your video camera. No discussion of politics or religion at any time, and attendees may be removed if not following our protocol. Of course, we do have some simple recommendations to make sure that this meeting is as enjoyable as possible. Recommended attire for each meeting is coat and tie. Please type your name and any appropriate Masonic title or location under your video to identify yourself to others joining with us live tonight. If you're not a Mason, please type guest after your name. Please enable your video camera if dressed appropriately. Please reduce any background noise. Keep your microphone muted when not speaking. Turn off any other programs to eliminate outside distractions so we can focus on Freemasonry. Brothers and friends, tonight our two guest speakers will be Worship Brother John W. Bizzack and Worship Brother Dan M. Kemble. These two men, in my opinion, do not deserve any formal introduction because you all know who they are and what they contribute to Freemasonry and our education and our experiences as we continue to grow as men and Masons. So tonight they will be discussing a book that they wrote called Men of Good Timber. It's a fantastic book, and during this presentation, I'll be putting some links together inside of the chat, and there'll be plenty of ways to get in touch with them or this book when the time is right, but I'm sure they'll have more information about that as well. So, brothers, without further ado, please welcome Worship Brother Bizzack and Worship Brother Dan Kemble. The floor is yours, brothers.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, brothers. We want to start off with a slide, if Brian gets it up on the screen there. And we want to talk about what Men of Good Timber is about. This is taken from a poem that was written in 1922 by Douglas Malloch. And it's an inspirational poem. And he compares the human character to the growth of trees. The poem you see on the screen there, and I want to highlight a couple of sections on it. You can read. I won't read the entire poem for you, and we'll leave it on the screen for a while. But in the third stanza, he says, "Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger the wind, the stronger the trees. The further the sky, the greater the length, the more the storm, the more the strength." I think that pretty much sums up the concept of character and the issue of how we make that a metaphor, uh, not just for the book, but for one particular essay that's in the book of the same title. Now, in the context of Mayer's poem, uh, a man of good timber would be someone with proven character, his integrity, his resilience. Everyday conduct has been tempered and strengthened by some kind of hardship, leaves him steady and dependable and upright in all seasons, as it were. The central metaphor of the essay in the book compares virtuous men to sturdy, well-seasoned trees directly, and we compare it to the tree whose knots and cracks add to their character. That's shaped by wind, rain, frost, sun. So, thus, men of virtue are formed by repeated choices for good and for endurance of hardship. That might even be called adversity forged character. But when we consider what it is in the past 78 episodes of our Rubicon series that we ask those in attendance and those 180,000 plus people around the world who watch these episodes is to do one thing, and that is to think about Freemasonry. And asking that not only means learning and thinking about and exploring the timeless philosophies and principles, and the tenets, but the structure and the mechanics of the institution that surround it. Organized masonry exists on two parallel tracks. It's an organized track, of course, organizationally speaking, and a philosophical track. And one cannot really grasp the profound depth of Freemasonry through superficial lenses, much like we can't measure the depth of the ocean by just merely standing on its shore. There's always more to explore, to uncover, to internalize, and embody within the vast teachings of Freemasonry. And that applies to the most seasoned veteran or accomplished past master. No matter how adept they are, they must remain a perpetual student. So possessing some level of accurate historical literacy about how Freemasonry has unfolded against the backdrop of this ever-changing society from which it exists and has to attract its members, it's important to understand about the Masonic culture in the past and today, and that's not to mention having some insight to where the fraternity is headed by doing so. Now, there's no contention that Freemasonry itself needs any improvement. The institution surrounding it, though, is altogether a different matter, and that's emphasized throughout the essays in this book. The Masonic literature and our own official records in the past and today affirms that the institution is in the business of teaching morality, and it is the uneven ways and means the fraternity has come to convey Masonry that has always been a point of contention within the ranks of membership and leadership since inception. Now, Men of Good Timber, full title is Men of Good Timber as Society Goes, so goes Freemasonry. It's just one of 47 essays and book reviews published as a limited edition volume in the fall of 2025 for a national conference that's drawn considerable attention. The essay of the same title, we find a critique of modern societal trends that notes a perceived decline in men of good timber due to cultural shifts, weakened role models, diminished emphasis on critical thinking, self-reliance, and moral responsibility. So Freemasonry as an institution rooted in its timeless moral and philosophical principles has never existed in isolation from the societies that we serve. Now, this collection of essays draws from decades of thoughtful Masonic scholarship and reflection by many other authors, and it begins by examining that dynamic interplay, probing how society shifts from the Morgan affairs political turbulence to the modern digital distractions and the major demographic changes that test the resilience of Freemasonry. There's an essay titled Societal Readiness in Freemasonry, Changing Demographics of Freemasonry, and it reveals that Freemasonry is far from just a static relic. It's a living force that is literally shaped and is being shaped now by current cultural events. Although it urges self-responsibility and accountability, we question that, and it begs today, as it has in the past, for a merit-based excellence amid this long track record of complacency and misinformation that externally surrounds the institution and is embedded in way too many of our lodges. At its core, these writings confront some very uncomfortable truths about the craft's internal challenges. That comes from ritual frivolity and members' disengagement, premature advancement of what we call the Great Masonic can kicking, of many unresolved reforms that have been on the table for multiple generations. Now, there is a coverage of a lot of early classic 20th century authors, and many of the ideas and things they expressed in the early 20th century are still valid today in application. Now, together, all these pieces offer more than just an analysis. They issue a call, as it were, to reject mediocrity, embrace the narrowness of higher standards, and to build the unfinished temples that we have to acknowledge there's many of, just based on the number of men who've come, seen, and left. Now, the book challenges us to answer a question. Are we passing on a craft of depth or of distraction? And in our current world, can Freemasonry endure as a beacon of self-improvement rather than just a social club adrift? Now, connected to that is a concern about generational change and perceived shrinking of pool of men that are suited for the work of Masonry. And with this debate acknowledged about whether this scarcity is real or overstated, perhaps the core question is actually, can the institution sustain itself if a significant number of members are less than men of good temper? Now, we'll ask that again later, and we'll have discussion about that. As one review of the book tells us, these essays remind us that organized Freemasonry is designed to move the world instead of moving with the world. How that can be accomplished is also found in the book, and the revelation is not new, brethren. And I'm sure Worshipful Brother Kemble can further elaborate on the question that I just asked. Well, can the institution sustain itself if a significant number of members are less than men of good timber? So, Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, brothers. When Worshipful Brother Bizzack and I engage in conversations about Freemasonry, as we have done frequently for the last several years, we inevitably end up talking about the extent to which the society in which we live has significantly changed over the years, and how in many ways, the institution of Freemasonry has ignored those societal changes. In the years immediately preceding World War II, North American society was pretty much homogenous. If you polled, I should say, any particular group of men at any given time, you'd find a fairly consistent set of responses with respect to questions like religion and belief in God, honesty and morality, civic responsibilities and duties. There wasn't an awful lot of variance in what you would find at those among men of that particular era. But with the coming of the Second World War and with the changes that we have seen in the aftermath of World War II, there has been a dramatic demographic shift. And it's that demographic shift that has had a tremendous impact on the pool of men from whom we, as Freemasons, will draw our candidates now and in the future. One of the things that I think is such a dramatic shift that we don't take into consideration very often is how our population has shifted from a predominantly rural-based population to a predominantly urban-based population. We have Masonic lodges that exist now in places where in 1940 there were communities, but now those communities no longer exist. And we haven't adjusted in terms of our expectations as to whether or not those communities can continue to support Freemasonry. In many instances, the answer is they simply can't. And so we're searching for a pool of potential candidates in places where men simply don't exist in any significant number to support Freemasonry. Another aspect of our demography that has changed is within urban areas. At one point in time, probably in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, men lived within walking distance of where they worked, of where they went to church, where they went to lodge. As urban cores have emptied, that's taken its toll on the civic institutions, the Masonic Lodge, the church, and businesses have moved out of the urban core as well. All of that's had its effect on Freemasonry. I think it was in the middle of the 19th century, the French philosopher Auguste Comte said, demographics is destiny. And in that phrase, he simply said that as demographics change, so too must you expect changes in the arc of the history of your particular society. Freemasonry has a reckoning with demographics. And at some point in time, we're going to have to acknowledge the intersection of the science of demography with Freemasonry as well. Let me give you an example. This is from a recent Pew Charitable Trust survey. In 1960, a survey of men found that about 98% said that they believed in God. Okay. Well, that's our primary qualification for membership in Freemasonry, a profession of a belief in God. We don't define God. We don't tell you how to believe in God, but Freemasonry says we want men who believe in a supreme creator. Just a few years ago, Pew conducted a follow-up to that survey, and the results came back that 80% of men said they believe in the existence of God. Now that's a drop-off of almost 20% in a 40, 50-year period of time. Now 80% is a big number. 80% of anything is a whole lot. But it immediately eliminates 20% of our pool of potential members. And that's just one example of how changing demographics changes the pool of men from whom we may expect to find membership or members for Freemasonry. One other related example is the shift in generational attitudes that we find from the 1960s forward, the acceptance of authoritarian structures, the acceptance of a responsibility of civic engagement. At one point in time, those were considered to be normal attitudes. But as Robert Putnam explored in his magnificent book, Bowling Alone, those attitudes have shifted. And now we find less inclination toward the acceptance of authoritarian structures, and we have an inclination towards less acceptance of civic engagement and even engagement at a neighborhood basis now. So demography has had a tremendous impact on Freemasonry. We have been very slow to come to an understanding of that, and even slower to begin to study how we might respond to that and how we might direct our efforts with respect to identifying men of good timber who may, in fact, be an asset to our fraternity in years to come. Many of the essays in this particular book, I think of it more as an anthology than a book with a common theme, if you will. But many of these particular essays come back to that specific point and try to address ways in which we can identify who is appropriate for membership in a Masonic Lodge and how we identify what is a good man, what are the characteristics of a good man, and will that man, in fact, be someone who is willing to submit himself and conform himself to our rules and regulations? And will that man show himself to be of the timber that we can use to build Freemasonry into the 21st century? Worshipful Brother John, several of your essays refer to challenges and refer to the ability to either accept or deny the challenges that Freemasonry presents. Would you like to discuss those with us for a moment?
Where's Brother Bizzack? You're muted.
There is an essay in the book called Challenges You Cannot Walk Away From. It's a film in the 1950s. How many have seen High Noon? Well, it's a film about a marshal. It's a Western. And it's about him trying to enforce the laws in his town that are not supporting him. And he has this strong sense of responsibility because of an oath he took. And the oath he took is that he will uphold the law. And he finds himself alone doing it. So he throws in the badge and he leaves. But the pull of his oath and his sincere belief in what he swore to uphold took him back to the town. He still didn't have growing support at first, but they saw the importance of it, and ultimately, in the end, of course, the town does rally around him to some degree. And then he quits, and he leaves again, having done his duty. There are several essays that they're not about movies, but they are about writers, one of them being Kipling, and one of them, I believe the title is We Must Know Something More About Masonry So We Can Do Something With It. And that's a line from one of his books where two adventurers in the British Army were exploring a Middle Eastern country that they were about to take over because these people in that country thought they were some sort of gods. And they were using all the principles of Masonry to teach these people how to live a better life. But they admitted to each other that they were so poorly educated about Masonry, and both of them were Masons, that they needed to learn more about it so they could do something with it. Very interesting story. It's one of Rudyard Kipling's magnificent books. There's several other essays that touch on these features, but it still comes down to discussions, and we've had several of them in our lodge and at Rubicon over the past few months, about whether or not the good man and the definition we use in Masonry is good man. Is it the same as a man of good timber? Are they synonymous? And are we able to look for men of good timber beyond just good men? So I think it's a question for discussion tonight. We've got several jurisdictions I see on the program this evening. And Brian, we'll turn it back over to you to start the discussion.
Okay, great. Brothers, thank you. Gentlemen, tonight's presentation really is meant to be an open discussion more than anything. If you do check your chat messages, you'll notice I put a link which will give you downloadable access to the summary of Men of Good Timber. And again, this book is broken up into 40 essays and 9 book reviews. If you would like to make a purchase, then you simply have to follow the instructions just laid out there in the chat as well. At some point, perhaps we'll have this available online, but until then, this is how we can get you a copy of the book. And just very quickly, all proceeds do go to the Rubicon Masonic Society to support our ongoing education purchases or activities, rather. This book is not a tax-deductible purchase if you do decide to make a purchase, because you are receiving the benefit from the book. With that being said, brothers, first of all, thank you. I know how much time and effort you have put into this book, and it's a fantastic collection of essays. Definitely one of my favorites thus far. You guys work so well together, and it's
Well,
very
but brother Brian, I don't want to
yeah,
let John off the hook quite so easily with the talk with the mention of the challenges that are raised in some of his essays.
sure.
And he mentioned the movie High Noon and how the sheriff in High Noon has to make a choice. And that choice that he makes is to act in his own physical best interest and walk away. Or he can live up to the oath of office that he took. I look at the photographs of men who are in this assembly this evening, and I see men from many different jurisdictions, and many of whom I've had the pleasure of meeting. And I have some appreciation for the extent to which men who are represented here this evening have invested in Freemasonry. And I dare say that just about everybody who is here this evening has had an opportunity to walk away. And yet we haven't. And why is that? What is there in Freemasonry that compels us to continue on this journey? Is it the power of the oath and obligation all by itself? Or is it the philosophy that that oath and obligation represents? But I think we all would agree there is something at work here that is far greater than any of us that ultimately won't allow any of us to simply walk away.
Well said. So why don't we start with that? What is it about Freemasonry that is keeping us around, keeping you around? We've all had challenges. We all encounter storms in our lives within Freemasonry, but Dan's right. Something makes us get on the fourth Monday of every month and talk about Freemasonry. I have my thoughts and suggestions, but I'm curious to know.
Wonderful, Brother Brian. I'd be happy to be the first to chime in.
Hi, Chad.
Good evening. When you asked that question, it occurred to me that there have been lots of times when I've been frustrated and I thought, I can kind of do all the things that I need to do by myself. I don't necessarily need to go to a lodge to kind of learn the lessons that I've already learned or apply the lessons that I've already learned. But it occurs to me that I don't like the idea of a world without Freemasonry in the form that I'm familiar with. It would seem I shudder at the idea that all the lodges are dark and all the doors are locked. When I joined the fraternity in 2007, somebody was there to keep those lights on, and I feel an obligation to be that Mason for my lifetime so that future generations of folks, men that haven't even been born yet, can find what I found and benefit in the way that I've benefited. And so I hate to think of a world without it. And I think that's why I'm tolerant of some of the frustrations and disappointments and things like that. A lot of the men without good timber that we're kind of forced to endure. I think that's my reason.
Thank you, Worship Brother. It's great to see you.
Likewise.
Any other thoughts or comments on that? Marshall, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's an interesting concept, and what I find, and I've noted here, is the expression invested in Freemasonry. For me, and I'm marking 25 years as a Mason this month, actually, I find that my investment in Freemasonry of my time and what I've contributed, I have received examples of how to live a better life than what I could do just by myself. I can look around my lodge room and I can see men in different walks of life, different examples where they are doing something I recognize as being done better than what I could do in myself, and I feel the opportunity to emulate them. And secondly, I recognize now in Freemasonry that I have the opportunity to give encouragement to others that I wouldn't have normally been willing to give, or and it's not just within Freemasonry. I've done this in my church and elsewhere. When I see something that is done very well, I can go to them and congratulate somebody for doing something. Most recently, there was a reader in my church who was the first time he was proclaiming from the pulpit. He was very, very nervous, but he did a superb job. He has a wonderful voice. So afterwards, as he was deep in prayer and probably complaining that he hadn't done well himself, I tapped him on the shoulder, interrupted him, and said how much I appreciated that he had stepped forward to do that. So it's an opportunity for me to give encouragement to somebody else. And finally, the investment that I've received, that I've given in Freemasonry, is that I feel I have achieved, pardon me, I've enjoyed achievements in Freemasonry that I simply could not have achieved anywhere else. No other organization has offered me the opportunities that I've enjoyed within Freemasonry. That's the sum of my investment that I can recognize right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Where are you from?
Also on here is past Grand Master, Most Worshipful Brother David Cameron of the Grand Lodge of Canada in the province of Ontario. He is the one who appointed me to be the Grand Historian in my jurisdiction a few years ago. Physically, most of you are in North America. You know where Lake Huron is. You know where Detroit is. I'm at the bottom end of Lake Huron, about an hour's drive north of Detroit.
Okay, great, great.
Brother, if I may, I'd like to respond to your use of the term investment. And you have kind of tangentially touched on one of my pet peeves here. And that pet peeve is this. I don't believe that I have ever been to a conferral of a degree in any Masonic lodge anywhere where at the end of the degree, someone doesn't stand up and say, you'll get out of Freemasonry what you put into it. And it's patently false. It just isn't true. The reality is, if you make any type of investment at all in Freemasonry, you'll get exponentially more out of it than you invest. Freemasonry is an incredible journey in that respect. Any investment at all yields incredible results.
But so few recognize what those returns are.
Yeah.
So that they many men participate for a while, walk away. They don't recognize the impact that they have had within their own lodge, and because they never realized the return from their investment. They didn't recognize what was going on.
Marshall, would that be because they weren't instructed properly? Could it be
Uh,
that they weren't given the time to learn masonry?
the expression, you can lead a horse to water, but
Exactly. Yeah.
it's not necessarily that they need the instruction. Um, another wonderful expression from years gone by is an interocular concussion, getting hit between the eyes with something. Some of us recognize what that is, and some of us just don't. We can be hit between the eyes with a 2x4 and still not feel the blow.
We have writings that extend back to the 1840s in North America and our own official records that tell us that even then, leadership, many grandmasters, uh, lodge leaders, and Masonic authors particularly, because they wrote about it constantly, is that men were not instructed properly. They were not given the opportunity to experience or learn these profound principles and tenets and how they can affect you. But they took it one step further because they weren't the right men. They didn't have the right stuff. They weren't men of good timber, all of them. And if they weren't given the opportunity to learn, and we selected the wrong men, shouldn't we be starting with who we select to make sure that they have time for masonry, to make sure they have some roots to want to learn, and they're coming for the right reasons? And the writings are pretty uniform on that for the past 120 years. And we still complain about that.
The expression, of course, we've all heard this, guarding the West Gate. Uh, and I'll just use my own lodge as an example. Within my jurisdiction, I know that others can share the same kind of story. From 2000, with the lockdown due to COVID-19, through to the end of last year, so to 2025. 5 years of data, 6 years of data actually. I was the contact person within my lodge for men who were interested in Freemasonry, and I was in touch with 20 men. Several of them, it was simply one or two phone calls, and then it became very clear that I had answered their questions, and that's all they were looking for. They did not pursue anything further. A few we met, we discussed what Freemasonry is, what it could be, what they were interested in, and they chose not to pursue anything. There are a few men where I took them aside, and I did sit down with one fellow over a cup of coffee, and I explained to him that the expectations we have of a man, he is not ready for. He was quite young at the time. He thought this would be a great step forward in his career, in his life, but he was still basically living in his parents' basement and spending most of his time online. He just did not have the means, nor the connections, nor the opportunity to be able to actively participate with us. And I bumped into him a couple of times since then. He's agreed. He's just not ready. There is one fellow who really wanted to become a Mason. And I asked him why. He said, because I just got some really cool tattoos and I want to know what they mean. Of the 20 that I've spoken with, there are 5 that have gone through the process and have been initiated. Several of them have been passed and raised, and a couple of them are now in our officer lineup, and I am so pleased to see them in my lodge. But that's 25% of the men who who have approached me are now Masons, and I would hope that that is the experience that others have within this group. That it's not every man who knocks on our door who should be admitted. We do need to guard the West Gate.
100% correct. If you could do me a favor, I'd like to go into this just a little bit. Dan, John, I want to hear your input and anyone else. Probably 80% of the viewers that watch the Rubicon Masonic Society are not subscribers, and we don't know if they're Masons or not. I'd be very curious to hear your response on who is Freemasonry for and who is Freemasonry not for. If I'm a potential man watching these, trying to better understand what Freemasonry is, what would your answer be?
The first thing I consider is just what Marshall was talking about. There has to be a point person, and there has to be a policy, a department, or an agents or a lodge that will stick to it. That our primary purpose of the investigation committee is to determine, does a man have time for Freemasonry? Many just want to come to find out what the tattoos they already got mean. I think they have much time for Masonry. But we have men, as you know, come and say, the only reason I want to join is my grandfather was a Shriner, and I don't care about all this. I just want to do this so I can be a Shriner. We have men who come and say, well, I can't meet twice a month. I work, and I can't get away. I don't have time for classes. I don't have time to participate. They tell us up front. We simply ask them, come back when you do, because this is taking time. And we'll help you take that time by teaching you how to manage your time. But I think those are the principal issues at hand, is that we have to start right at the West Gate. And unless are convinced, and we can make mistakes, of course, and certainly have, unless we find that a man has the time to commit and we find corresponding circumstances and evidence that suggest he's telling us exactly that he has time to commit, then why do we admit him? Just on the chance that he'll stick around, just so we can get some dues, add to the roster? What's our motivation for just letting men in who don't have time to devote themselves to Masonry? So I think that's where we have to start.
Dan?
I'm not sure that I know how to answer that, Brian. If you used that test in 1978 when I petitioned the lodge, I'm not sure that I would have made it in.
Yeah.
I petitioned the lodge because my grandfather was a member of that lodge. And his best friend was his brother-in-law, my great uncle. He's also a member of that lodge. And at the age of 21, I couldn't have told you much about what I aspired to be or what I wanted to do, but I knew this much. Whatever they were, I wanted to be that. And
Were
that
you
was,
that when
pardon
you
me,
joined up? Did you achieve that when you joined, or how long did it take before you started really learning to become a Mason?
probably 20 years. I spent the first 20 years of my membership, mastering the mechanics of Masonry. And then, coming to the realization that, it isn't the mechanics that have caused this organization to endure for 300 years, but it is the philosophy on which those mechanics are grounded. You mentioned early in your introduction that Freemasonry proceeds along two parallel tracks. We've got the administrative institutional side, and we've got the philosophical side. The administrative side has absolutely no value unless it is to provide an environment in which the philosophical side can thrive. But we put all of our energy and our efforts into the administrative side. I shouldn't say all, but we put a significant amount, and we do that at the expense of studying the philosophy and the meaning of why we engage in this process. Mm-hmm. And Brian, I still haven't measured up. So, my journey is not complete.
I beg to differ. Beg to differ. But I think what you're saying is very honest, and it's something that I'm sure a lot of other men can relate to. You don't really, and I think that's one of the reasons why we are doing this. we, the Rubicon, and why we get together once a month is to create more awareness of Freemasonry. How would anyone else answer that question? Why, what makes, what is a good man? Who should join and who should not join? Who is it for? Who is it not for, from your perspective?
I'll add this, excuse me, that there's a fellow fellow in my community who was a Mason in a lodge not too far away. He had to stop out for various reasons of his career and family and so forth. He wants to get back, but he's still got a few things he needs to work through. In a conversation with him, the wonderful expression came up, and I have no idea from whom this came originally, but I like it. Uh, Freemasonry and a Masonic lodge in particular is a safe and sacred space where a man can learn to become a gentleman. He had an interesting take on that, that it is his wife who recognizes how safe a space this is for men. Because when he goes out to be with other Masons, she has no worry, no concern about what he's going to be doing or who he's going to be with or what condition he will be in when he gets home. And I thought that is really a cool idea, that it's not just a safe place for us, but our wives recognize we are safe when we are together with other men, and we are going to be safe when we get back home.
Anyone else? You'd think it'd be an easy question, but in some cases it's not.
Well, I'll say something, Brother Brian. You know, I always have something to say. Um, I have for the last, I'd say maybe about 5 years, um, been in charge of directing young men that approach my lodge in South Pasadena. Just the year before last, the Grand Lodge actually created a new position for that, which is called a prospect manager. I really prefer the term coach, but what they are really pitching very, very hard at our Grand Lodge is basically management. Um, they've created a portal, and they have quite a few experts, and they have a thing that if you go online, you can say I'm interested in masonry, and they will refer you to a lodge. And I've attended a couple of the sessions where they're teaching this approach, one that my lodge does not engage in, um, where I'm supposed to have a committee, and each time that somebody comes through that portal, I'm supposed to assign a brother to that person who is tasked with just dogging this guy's heels to get him into masonry. Mm. And the way we do it is when they get when they get a referral, uh, they get an email from me, and describe why I welcome them to be a prospect, and I send them my two papers, one on observant masonry about the craft, the culture of our lodge, and the other about is Guarding the West Gate. I've given both of those talks on this series about how we bring men in to an observant lodge, and then as long as we stay on there, they get from me at the first of the month. When the trestle board comes out, I send it to them. They're welcome to come, but we don't push them. We believe in this. This should be your own free will and accord. We welcome you to come, but then we expect, if you're coming, that you're going to come often enough and frequently enough, and not just sit around, but help out, that kind of thing, before we give somebody a petition. So the person has to demonstrate that they have the time, and that they have the energy, and that they have the interest, before we give them a petition. But to answer the earlier question, the reason I'm doing this and what I'm getting out of Freemasonry right now, my whole life I've had the great good fortune to have people mentor me at various times, teachers and other people, and now in my so-called golden years, I get a lot of satisfaction out of the guys that do come in there and do make a commitment. But our Grand Lodge, they really, after it was year before last, was the first year since 1965 that we had more people join the fraternity than left it. And this is just going right down the pattern that Brother Bizzack talks about in his book Island Freemasonry. And their interest is getting as many people through the turnstiles as they possibly can. But to me, I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and it's a very fulfilling thing to feel that you're paying back for that tutelage and that help that you've gotten through your life. And the young men that have been coming in, I see one of them is my son, who's now the senior warden at South Pasadena. I've seen what it can do, what Freemasonry can do in terms of maturity and responsibility, and it just seems like a good way in my retirement years to pay back what I got through my life. And if you concentrate on really studying Masonry and practicing Masonry rather than just let's get guys in here, that that seems to work very well, and it's very satisfying and invigorating. But the there are a lot of people that just get brought in, and there are a few lodges that really fit the description of the proverbial mill that we had. They had a big feature on a lodge here recently, and one year they had raised 19 masons.
Yeah.
Well, if you take 19 and there's 3 degrees, that's 57 of them. You're doing more than a degree a week, but that's not the way it's done. 2, 3, 4 guys will be given a degree on a given night. that's a very poor way to do it. And in an observant lodge, we do them one at a time. We do the full forms and all of that. They've also been talking about getting rid of the cipher that we use and just have the whole ritual book uh, in plain English.
Well, that's a jurisdictional issue, though.
Yeah, those are jurisdictional issues. Yeah,
So
but
it's
and
not.
our lodge has decided if they do that, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to continue doing it
So, like
the
anything, if we
old-fashioned
don't
way.
like it, we need to propose changes. But the body
Yeah.
of the lodge is going to determine if it's accepted or not. John Dan, do you have any comments on that? What's your piggyback off of what Gerald said?
Well, I've talked to several people in California, and I've heard the issue about more people have come in than have left for the first time since the 60s. But is there a tracking going on this time, Jerry, where they know how long they're going to stay? And are they staying long or as long or longer than the ones who were admitted in mass in the 60s?
This is such a new thing. I don't think that we have any basis to say that. But I I, um, I suspect that a lot of the people that do come in that way, and especially if they don't get any kind of real Masonic education afterwards, that
Yeah.
the degrees you see them that one time.
Right.
The way ritual is supposed to work is the repetition is the way that it works. You just have that one experience, and then the rest of it is you're coming to the barbecues and those kind of things. You're not really experiencing masonry. You're in a men's club.
But that's
Right.
not their fault. I think that's, in my
It's
opinion,
not their fault, but
that's the
yeah,
fault. That's the fault of the lodge and the jurisdiction.
agreed.
And I think that's a big part of the problem is a young man or a man of any age coming in has no idea most of the time what they're getting into. And I think that it would be great for Freemasonry to do a better job of explaining to the man before they make that commitment or take the obligation what this really truly is about. And let them decide up front and let them know that this is hard work. It's going to take time.
Well,
It's going to be
that's what I
difficult.
do. That's why
Yeah.
I send them that couple of papers
No, I
that
know, and I'm not saying you.
describing those kind
I'm
of
saying
things.
in
But
general, we have to be very transparent up front.
right.
It's like in business. Hey, if you want to do business with me, the first thing I probably should let you know is I'm not the cheapest company out there to work with. Okay. It's about the result that we're all after. Mark St. Cyr put a comment in the chat box. He said his camera and mic aren't working. So I'm just going to read this. Every year when the dues are called, I wrestle with should I send them in or demit. The only reason I don't demit is because I believe in the philosophical values and lessons that it dispenses for those that want it. I only keep remitting because I want to support the fraternity and hope that it finds its way. Although I'm not too sure it can survive the way it's currently constructed. However, I will say that this men of good timber are always out there and in the same proportions as always have been. The problem is if you don't offer a true place where they can feel they're being surrounded by men of equal timber, then they're not going to come or stay. We're becoming a social club, and management just wants to manage it. I couldn't agree more. I think you're 100% right, Mark. The
I do
challenge
too.
challenge is how does that get fixed? So,
So Brian, if you don't mind,
yeah, please.
I think there's something that's relative to that. Um, for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, Ware Lodge of Research has had an ongoing research project called Voices of Freemasonry. There are men who are participating here tonight who have participated in that Voices of Freemasonry project. It's a 10-question questionnaire. The questions change from time to time, but over the course of the years, the first question on every set of questionnaires that we've sent out has been the same. And that question is, what is it that attracted you to Freemasonry in the first place? And the overwhelming response to that, I mean, well over 80% is there was someone that I knew, either a family member, a close relative, a friend, a coworker, someone with whom I had a close relationship that I knew was a Freemason, and I wanted to be like them. It was their influence.
Yeah.
Now, if you put that into the context of men of good timber, does that suggest that like seeks like? Is it men of good timber searching for other men of good timber?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think I think men and people of all ages seek relationship, seek belonging, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a man of good timber. I would hope it would be, but obviously we know it's not always the case.
Well, the conclusion that I draw from that, and it may not relate to good timber, but it tells me that the greatest drawing power that Freemasonry has is us.
Sure.
The opposite side of that coin is if people look at our lives and see lives that they would just as soon not emulate, that certainly doesn't speak well for Freemasonry, does it? Or bode well for Freemasonry.
Well, as we were discussing in the beginning, the world is changing. Society is changing. Society today is way different than it was 30 years ago. And I like what John said. It's designed to move the world instead of moving with the world. Dan, when you said that Freemasonry, the investment in Freemasonry is more than what you put into it, what you get out of it. You said it's substantially more. But just give us just a simple answer for maybe anyone that's new or not a Mason or just struggling to maintain their commitment to Masonry. What is it? What is the investment that they're getting? Maybe they just need to be reminded. I know that may sound like a silly question or a simple question, but what would be the answer that comes to your mind?
Well, it's certainly not a silly question. And I don't know that it's all that simple because, quite frankly, it requires you to invest the most precious thing that you have, and that is your time.
Yeah.
It's an investment of time, and that can never be replaced. It's an investment of your energy. But all you have to do to really begin to understand the answer to that question is look at the images that are in front of you tonight. You get the company of these good men. You get the influences of these good men. You get to share in the talents of these good men. You get the inspiration of these good men. You get to be in that forest of good timber.
Yeah.
Now, the payoff's not immediate. You have to invest time and you have to be patient. But over a period of time, a life invested in Freemasonry, at some point in time, you're going to wake up one morning and say, oh, that's why we do this.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about.
Yeah. Good point. Most worshipful Cameron, good to see you.
Hello, everybody. I want to bring a couple of threads here together, and congratulate you on doing this. I think this is important. I think when men join Masonry, as has been pointed out, they don't know what they're getting into. It's hard to determine whether they're going to be a good timber. At the time when they join, if they're 20, 30, they're saplings. You don't know what's going to happen with them, but they join. And yes, many of them leave. Many of them become social masons, and only a few are drawn to delve into the deeper aspects of masonry and to associate like the men that we see here tonight. And I've seen it many times in my lodge where someone comes in and I mean, they're interested, but they don't get any support from anyone else in their lodge, and they have to reach out or luckily just encounter someone that they can share their interest with, get involved with a group like this. So I'm starting to ramble now, but I guess that my point is in terms of people joining, you want to make sure that they're serious. They get to know what we're about. But to look for that person that's going to end up being very intellectually stimulated by masonry. I don't think you can do that at the beginning. I think you have to just let that happen and give the opportunity for those people that are going to go that way to blossom. And I think that's what you're doing. Keep up the good work.
I think probably the right men too, I would agree. The right men, quote unquote, are okay with being patient. And I think the lodges need to be patient. Like you said, it's not a rush. It takes time. I think, Dan, you said that. I think patience is probably the best sign of the man when they're at the West Gate. They're okay with taking that time. Or at least it's a good sign, in my opinion. And lodges too. Lodges shouldn't be desperate for members. Lodges should be able to be patient and choose the members that they feel will contribute best to the lodge. Easier said than done, of course, but that's an important factor. John, what is your and Dan, what is of all of the essays in the book, are there any that stand out to you the most, or that impacted you the most, or that you feel are embody your vision or your feelings towards masonry over others? Just curious.
Dan, you go ahead.
There are several in there that I think the essay that really relates back to the men of good timber really, I think, touches a chord with me. And I think it also relates to what Most Worshipful Brother David was just talking about, and that is, we have these stands of good timber. Maybe we need to be reminded that we have a responsibility to tend those stands of good timber, help water them, help cultivate them, help them to grow. But I think the notion that there is a pool of men. We're taught that men are first made masons in their heart. In this pool of good timber, we're looking at men who, whether or not they have ever petitioned a Masonic lodge, probably have been made masons in their heart. We just need to be sure that they get into the right place. And at that point in time, we need to exercise patience, teach them to exercise patience, that they can be involved in an experience that is as rewarding as we have found it to be.
I haven't read all the essays in this book, but of the ones I've read, the one I would really pick out is Brother Bizzack's one, Aspiration for Office, the Principle of Merit and Freemasonry.
Yeah. We recently had a conversation, our two-part education series in Lexington Lodge about leadership, and that was a big part of the conversations that took place.
One of the things in the new plan at California Grand Lodge is they have a system of having the Grand Lodge do a lot of the actual business work of the lodge, and they're they're pitching the idea that Freemasonry teaches um, uh, not responsibility, but teaches leadership. But have part of your strategy on teaching leadership to take the harder, more laborious parts of running a Masonic lodge and we'll do that for you so you can be the master of your lodge but not have to deal with the business part. Seems like you're defeating your own stated purpose.
Any other comments on good timber?
One other thing that follow up on what Brother David just said, and we've said this before. I believe we even have a plaque at our lodge that says this, that we look at when we go out the Tyler's Hall, that a Freemasonry is to mean anything to a man and he to it. He must spend some time with it.
Yeah.
And that eliminates those who don't have time for Masonry. Now, he must spend some time with it, but it is the responsibility of the lodge, as Dan said, to inspire them and to bring them along. And if they are men of good timber, then they'll have the patience, they'll have spent some time with it, and they can make up their own minds. Is this for me? Can I do this? Should I go on?
Yeah.
So Brian, before we get completely away from him, I want to go back just for a minute to Douglas Malloch, a great poet, wrote many poems specifically about Masonry. I haven't been able to find a volume of Malloch's Masonic poetry where it was collected all in one volume and published. But he does have several volumes of poetry that are still available. He's an absolutely excellent poet. And I think his analogy of good timber to masonry is absolutely accurate. It certainly inspired, I think, both John and I in compiling this particular book. And for those who are looking to explore more about Douglas Malloch, there's more out there to be found.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting how sometimes the thoughts of Freemasonry can really make us think and quiet down and self-reflect. And I think that's one of the beauties of Freemasonry is it's not black and white, and it's a constant process of self-discovery with whatever journey we're in. And I think men that are looking for that and recognize that within themselves are on the first verge step to being men of good timber. And I think that's what we're all trying to do together. So, well, this has been a very good conversation. I just want to reiterate that if you are interested, the summary to this book is free for you to download. It's in the chat. So I strongly recommend you click the link and download it. And if any of those papers are of interest to you that might make you have an interest in acquiring the book, just let us know. You can reach out to us or you can follow the instructions on how to do that. So, John, Dan, any final comments before we close out tonight regarding Men of Good Timber before we part?
Just appreciate everybody being here, and I hope if you do run across a copy and take some time and pick out the ones that interest you the most.
Dan, any final comments on that?
I think I'm sitting here looking at a forest of good timber. It's a pleasure.
Well said. Do they get a signed autograph copy or is that extra?
Dan will sign them all.
Either you'll sign for Dan and yourself or he'll sign for you. All right. All right, brothers. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on here. Our next Masonic education, brothers, will be March 23rd. Do we have that lined up yet, John?
That is
We do
to
have.
be determined.
Still to be determined. Okay. Yeah. Use the auto pen. All right.
You
So,
know, when you know, please.
yeah, we'll do. March 23rd. The information for the presentation will be sent the morning of, and look forward for having you join us back for then. Obviously, speaking of challenges, Dan, we still have this book challenge if you want to mention that again, please.
We do. We have 4 months left. This was a book challenge that began the 1st of June of 2025. It ends June 31, 2026. So we're kind of getting to the home stretch on it. And we've challenged men to read one book per month about Freemasonry. And if you're looking for a book to read, Men of Good Timber is out there and available. You can always pick up a copy of that. But if you take us up on the challenge, drop us an email and let us know what book or what books you've read. We'd love to hear from you on that. And while I'm discussing that, Brother Brian, with your permission, I'm going to toss this over to Brother Jeriel because the Southern California Lodge of Research is conducting a book survey right now as well.
Sure.
Yeah, we will be publishing the results of that poll in our September issue this year.
Great. Great.
Jerry, you want to tell us what it is?
Well, the poll is this is our fourth time we've done book polls, and this time we're styling it as the 10 books that you think that Masons should all own.
Great. Look forward to
I'll
hearing.
also echo something that you were just saying, Brother Dan. Reason I show up here almost every month and have been for the past several years is the men of good timber who I see putting it on, and I think it's really worth my time to spend time with men like yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. We appreciate that. Okay, just a couple quick Masonic resources recommendations. If you haven't, please check out thecraftsman.org, Worship Brother Bizzack's website. A lot of great content in there. Strongly recommend you go and check it out. In addition to that, we have the Ware Lodge of Research website, which was recently rebuilt. A lot of great information on there as well, book reviews and so forth. So please be sure to check out the content there as well. And then, of course, we have the Philalethes Society. John, do you want to say a few words about Philalethes?
Sure. Brothers, if you aren't aware of the Philalethes, it was founded in 1928. It's an international Masonic research society, and it's the oldest independent Masonic research society in North America. It publishes a quarterly edition of the Journal of Masonic Research and Letters. And if you want to learn more about subscribing to that for your lodge or individually, I'll put a link on the chat box screen as soon as I finish these remarks. And click on in, it'll take you to the site, or you can get a hold of me and I'll tell you more about it.
Great. Thank you. All right. Worship Brother Alan Martin, will you please deliver our closing devotion tonight?
Brothers, let's pray. Grand Architect of the universe, as we now prepare to close our time together this evening, we pray that you will endue us with the competency of your divine wisdom, that we may be better enabled to conduct our lives as just and upright men and Masons. We pray that you guide our thoughts and actions and lead us as we fortify our moral virtues and grant us the necessary strength, wisdom, and courage as we endeavor to work for your great purposes through Masonry. Amen.
So mote be. Thank you, Alan. Brothers and friends, again, thank you for joining us. If you know of anyone else that would like to participate and they're a Mason, please ask them to RSVP, RubiconMasonicsociety.com/RSVP. Our next meeting is March 23rd, 7 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, brothers, may we always be happy to meet, sorry to part, and happy to meet again. Please enjoy this short classical piece by Claude Debussy entitled The Girl with the Flaxen Hair. Talk to you soon.